Good morning. Goeie môre, fellow South Africans. Okay. I'm going to have a rant, okay? And my rant is actually inspired by the fellow who I was supposed to speak to last Sunday night, Mark. Now, Mark has just sent me a text message saying that he can't speak this Sunday night either because, guess what? Eskom, load shedding, okay? Load shedding means that he will have no power during that time. Now, let me get back to my rant. The problem you have in South Africa is quite simple. You have a situation where you've got a group of people who have absolutely no logic and no common sense running the country. Just get over it. That's a fact. And I have to go no further than an earlier video that I posted where an academic, a psychologist, an expert in the areas of IQs, came to South Africa and he tested 500 people, and they were half black and half white. And the IQ test was based on logic. And the average IQ of the Bantu population in that test, as I said, I'll put the link down below. You can go and have a look at it for yourself. The average IQ for the Bantu population was 70. The average IQ for the white population was 100. So this is what is actually going on in South Africa. You've got, through affirmative action, you've got a bunch of people who genetically do not have the IQ of the white population, and that is proven. The link is below. And they're running the country. No wonder it's falling into a cesspit. Now, when you add another factor into that, which is again proven, and that factor is called corruption at the highest levels in South Africa, and it goes all the way through these organizations like Eskom, South African Airways, etc., etc., etc. I mean, you can just point at any state-owned enterprise which is run by affirmative action by a black person who has an average IQ of 70%, forget the percent, 70, has an IQ of 70, and you've got all these really highly skilled white people who have an average IQ of 100 who are just being ignored because of affirmative action. How crazy is that? I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. So you've got corruption and you've got a low IQ running the country. That's a recipe for disaster. You know what it is? It's time for the adults in the room, and I mean that with no disrespect to the Bantu people, but it's time for the people who have the higher IQ, the white South Africans, to get back into those positions and steer the country back on course, because right now it's falling apart. And there's absolutely no question about that. The country is falling apart at the seams. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to say, and that is that in the videos that I have attached here, the first video is actually talking about the stupidity of the South African government dealing with China when it comes to mining coal. In fact, one of my regulars, Darby, sent me an email, and I'll just read to you what he said because this is so relevant to this rant. Sir, we must call them civilized. I wonder where it is going to end. The rand is plummeting. I wonder why China already owns coal mines in Mpumalanga have their own train for transport of high-grade anthracite or coal to Richards Bay. I hear that there are 30 million tons of coal in Richards Bay Harbour and 30 Chinese cargo ships in the port right now uploading coal as we speak. Richards Bay was declared a no-fly zone this morning. I wonder why they don't want anyone flying over it. My nephew got a business there, a crusher. He says there's mountains of coals there at Coal for Africa, and Eskom is lying about the load shedding. They have no coal for the power stations. Lying shitheads. 5 farm attacks from Wednesday in Mpumalanga. No casualties so far, thank heavens. The Boers are regrouping now thanks to your videos. If they want war, we'll give them a war. But this time, America and the UK must leave us alone. And I won't go on because he's got a bit of a rant happening too. Now, getting back to this whole thing with the coal. If what Davy is saying is true, it's a huge scandal. What he is saying, and I can't verify this, but I'm sure there's a reporter in South Africa who can. But what he's saying is that the Chinese are mining high-grade coal in the Limpopo region, Mpumalanga region, and by their own train shipping it down to Richards Bay and taking it offshore, while Eskom is saying that it can't get any coal. Now, whose friggin' coal is it? It's not friggin' China's coal. That's South Africa's coal that is going offshore and resulting in people like Mark getting 2 hours per day of power in Ganubi. How ridiculous is that? You know, I mentioned that word corruption earlier. Over R1 trillion has been stolen by the people who run Eskom. That's R1 trillion, over R1 trillion. And the state-owned enterprise is absolutely bankrupt now. Look, as I said before, it's time for the adults in the room to kick the kids out of their perches because they don't know what the hell they're doing and they're corrupt as hell. All right, guys, there are 2 videos and they both are very, very relevant. Take care and have a great day. Bye for now. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to be kept informed. Bye.
South Africa power utility Eskom has confirmed its coal supplies are under severe pressure. It says stockpiles have hit critical levels at least 10 of the 15 power stations it operates. CGTN's Angelo Coppola has this report.
While the coal stockpile situation is serious and there's the possibility of load shedding before the end of the year, the company is also trying to solve a myriad of financial challenges.
We also said we are not going to appoint additional person. There will be no bonuses at the senior management. We went to the NESA and we argued and we got 32 billion. We got our 1 billion back from McKinsey. But the situation still needs a long-term strategy. And right now, at this moment in time, we are talking to government to finalize a long-term strategy.
Part of that strategy has to do with solving coal supply challenges. 5 power stations have less than 5 days coal stockpiled.
I think the stockpile situation is unbelievably serious, primarily because the last time we were there in about 2008, we found that the last 10 days of stockpile coal was worthless. It was devolatilized coal and rock.
Eskom, the second largest company in South Africa, has assets of $57 billion. It's the engine that powers the economy, and it's in trouble.
It's going to take time. We're going to take painful decisions. We're going to take another 3-4 years for it to be stable. But up until now, we're in the right direction.
Not everyone is as optimistic, however.
The coal situation, together with the additional financial pressure to fix up mess-ups, it looks to me like this utility is busy nose-diving into the ground.
The situation at the power utility does appear to be critical, but it seems to be solvable. It's a question of time. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Those are the headlines. It's back to Jane.
Thank you for that, Shahan. China
wants South Africa's coal. It's promising to pump billions into the industry. The economic giant already has its eyes on Limpopo's Makhoda coal mine. But the rest of the world is moving towards clean energy, and South Africa has a plan that includes a greener energy mix. So why are we still investing so heavily in coal? My guests tonight are NOM's Philip Vilakazi, energy analyst, Chris Yelland, and Groundworks' Bobby Peake, and he joins us via Skype. Very good to have all three of you with us. Mr. Vilakazi, I should imagine this is good news for your workers.
Probably yes, even the country itself, when coming to issues of our current state of affairs economically. As a parent, as a leader, it becomes apparent. If you drill deep into since 1880, when the product or the mineral called coal was discovered, you would then make a calculation that it gives you 138 years. And whatever is going on now, you need to understand in everything that you develop, you can't leave human life behind. South African unemployment rate is so high, and the most contributing part of it are the academics, mostly the young people. And obviously, any investor who comes to South Africa with an intention to boost the economy, to adhere to the statutes of the South African rules, who else can say no? Especially from where I'm standing as a leader of a trade union.
Chris Yelland, we'll get to the economics a little bit later, but dealing with employment here, do you think the numbers are real? Are we realistic when we think about what it is that is going to be happening as far as workers are concerned, do you think?
I think we have to be careful about thinking that anything is going to happen. What we've seen is just a cooperation agreement on the subject, and this is very, very far from a real project yet. And there's a lot of water that has to flow in the bridge before it becomes a real project. So
not just largesse, but there's a lot of detail that has to be covered.
There seems to me that there's a parallel universe out there where common sense and logic don't seem to apply. You see, you have the Limpopo Industrial Development Agency. Limpopo was really on the bones of its backside not so long ago under administration. And it's talking about a 4,600 megawatt new coal-fired plant. Now, a plant like that, sunk Eskom and put it in its current position. I'm not sure whether the Limpopo province has the balance sheet for this, number one. Number two, there is
so are you saying that they're possibly taking on something that's not sustainable or that's not even viable?
Absolutely, and not just that. You have to remember, there is a national government process that looks at energy procurement. This is the Integrated Resource Plan for Electricity. And in the new IRP, there is no new coal other than 2 IPPs, small IPPs, that have been forced in, not for reasons of jobs, not for reasons of price, not for reasons of CO2 emission, not for reasons of water use, and not for reason of employment. In fact, they have been forced into the mix because they are contractually bound. They don't actually want that in the mix, but they have to put it in because they're contractually bound, because the bidders have been announced, there's been a public procurement process. So I would say that this is completely out of step and in some kind of a parallel universe with the reality of energy procurement in South Africa.
Bobby Peake, do you think we are talking about a parallel universe here? Is that what we're just about to enter, or do you think China's interest could really have a dynamic and positive impact on our economy and employment?
Good evening, Jen, and good evening to the fellow panelists. This morning I tweeted the presidency and I asked the presidency on behalf of Groundwork and Life After Coal, could we see the memorandums of understanding, could we see the cooperation agreements? Because I think until we see these cooperation agreements in a process of open democracy, as has been mentioned, we're living in a parallel universe. Somebody is doing something somewhere where the workers, the people that are depending upon a new economy in this country, depending on an economy that services the poor, They don't get to understand and get to have a say in this. So I think, yes, we are living in a parallel economy. And I think the reality is we must remember that Medupi and Kusile, the two big coal-fired power stations that we have now, those coal-fired power stations started off at 30 billion rand each around 2005. That was Alec Irwin's statements. Today, Kusile is costing us, in terms of finish until, cost to the end of product or end of production, 225 billion rand. So you can see how this has escalated. And finally, I just think, if we look at the type of debt that we're in now, the rand today was fighting to stay below 16 rand to the dollar. Pravin Gordhan, when he was finance minister, got us into a deal with the World Bank that gave us $3.75 billion to build Medupi. And because of that loan, we are in a precarious strait. So we are saying any agreement with China that puts us into debt could be considered odious debt. And so we need an open democracy to protect ourselves and to protect workers and communities in the country.
Mr. Vilakazi, your responses to that, and do you think that the worker is possibly not getting the sort of say that they should in this deal, these deals, if they go ahead?
You see, maybe let me clarify this thing. I understand the two gentlemen who are putting a view here. We need to start somewhere. My opening said, since 1880, in 1895, when this product was discovered in Witbank, for an example, around Witbank, Emelo, and Secunda, one can ask a simple question. We must not abuse democracy. Who did know the details of the agreement by then, by the very same investors? We have got a very constitutional democracy where people
Sorry, you say we've got to start somewhere. I mean, is this the right way to start, though? I mean, isn't it rather antiquated? Aren't there better areas that we should be looking at, more progressive areas?
It's quite correct for a parent to go out and look for what can feed the kids. And if they criticize having that on the table. We have got a system that, I'm talking from Labour's point of view, I'm not a workerist, I'm a member of the community. I will talk on the part of the community if needs be. But for now, I want to clarify. We welcome the investments. And the only thing that we need to look into is that every investor who comes into South Africa is not coming here to be abusive. We have got a very clear legislative framework when coming to issues of regulating the relationship of employer-employees. In as far as that is concerned, we are clear. And our responsibility as a trade union is to behave as a watchdog of wrongdoers.
Can I pause you there for a moment, because we've got a call on the line from Paul. Grant, go ahead.
Hi, Jane. A quick question. We've got Sasol 1, Sasol 2, clean burning Sasol, making petrol from coal. Question is, why are we exporting our coal as a commodity when we have the ability, the people, the factories, and the raw material to make our own fuel from coal? It beggars belief that we sell our coal and then on a weakening rand bring in crude oil to make expensive petrol. Our president has said, let's add value. So let's add value to our coal, and why don't we export petrol?
Thanks, Grant.
If there's an obvious answer, I'd like to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
South Africa produces a small part of its liquid fuel requirements, not its full amounts, and there simply is not the capacity, the production capacity at Sasol to produce more without massive investments, which will be highly carbon dioxide emitting technologies, when South Africa is committed to reducing its CO2 emissions. These are international commitments. This is what I can't understand about this parallel universe in Limpopo, that they are looking at 4,600 megawatts of new coal power at a time when South Africa, as a nation, has made international commitments to reduce its CO2 emissions. The two are just totally contradictory. And to be frank, South Africa needs new coal power like it needs a hole in the head. About 80% of all the electricity in South Africa comes from coal. We need less coal power, more flexible power. We do not need more coal power at all. We've got too much in the mix.
Without coal at the moment, we'd be in the dark, wouldn't we, if you look at Eskom?
I'm not saying we must switch off the coal power stations, but we shouldn't build new coal power stations, and we should allow the old ones to naturally come to the end of their life over a period of decades, and in the process manage a just transition of South Africa away to a clean future where we can redeploy and retrain jobs. And this is not something that happens overnight. This is going to happen over 2 or 3 decades. So we've got plenty of time to manage a just transition.
Mr. Speaker, is that the way to go, from an environment point of view, from a clean air point of view, and sustainability?
If we have to look at economic development for South Africa, and particularly with regards to how do we create an economic development system that services people and services the workers in South Africa. China employs 3.6 million people in its renewable industry, and I think that's even a low figure. Why is China exporting and importing coal technology? Why doesn't China rather invest in South Africa with renewable energy, building those renewable energy plants in South Africa to ensure that South Africans are employed and that we can get energy onto the grid that is clean, that is affordable for people, and that does not destroy the land? Because we must remember that coal and the mining of it and the burning of it destroys the land. The air pollution costs in South Africa, externalization, just from one pollutant, is 35 billion rand a year. The water cost for Kusile itself, the externalized water costs in terms of the acid mine drainage, the purification plants to clean up the water, all of that eventually is going to cost us possibly up to 60 billion rand a year. So I think there are better ways to do it. There are cheaper ways to do this. And critically, there are ways to get more workers working if we look at an alternative and a just transition economy. And that means...
Yeah, okay. Let me bring you, Mr. Vukadzi. I mean, what do you make of that model there, that business plan? It seems to be taking on in many parts of the world, possibly not in the US, that renewable energy is the way to go, that you possibly will bring in a bigger workforce eventually. Shouldn't that be the aim for workers, the longevity in that?
You see, another part that I hear many of South Africans are struggling to face as a reality is the kind of readiness of our own people in terms of skills and knowledge. If you can blame whoever is alive now, you will be wrong, because the first area is to say, is South African educational system or the current workforce ready to can be renewed? My colleague here raised an issue to say, we need to start somewhere. The first thing is to prepare the kind of workforce and the universe you're operating in to say, South Africa, why must we be price takers? Why must we depend from other people? And if we are starting something that is making other people not to understand, it's fine. It's an open discussion to say, good people, are we having enough skills? Do we have soldiers that can take on this renewable...
Shouldn't people be skilled up?
Yes. And the fact of the matter is, if I can tell you now, I'm a product of the mining industry for our own information. This industry has made a lot of damage in the country. You go all over the show, there are ghost towns which are caused by this. As a result of this kind of discussions, our people do discuss for the sake of discussion. They do not discuss planning for the future. That's why we are worried. I'm saying to you, mining industry for coal only has operated for 138 years. Many decades, like you said. But why didn't the owners by then have the idea like the question you're raising now? And now we're starting here to say, let us beneficiate from the coal that will be mined in Limpopo.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there again. We've got another caller, Manny from Glen Vista. Go ahead, please, Manny.
Hi.
Hi, Manny. What's your question?
Hi, good evening. I disagree with Chris earlier, and I have the belief that as Africans, we need to find ways and means to use our resources for the benefit of our people.
Yes.
What is happening, and has been happening for some time now, we're allowing outside countries, we're giving them more power than they already have.
Yes.
And we're making South Africa, and in essence, we're making Africa poorer. So our leadership need to think out of the box and stop relying on countries that don't really have the interest of Africans at heart.
Okay, thanks, Manny. All right, thinking out of the box?
Entirely with the concept that we should be using our natural resources that have been bestowed upon us to the best effect of our economy and our people and the development of South Africa. The point is that our best energy resources are solar and wind. These are massive resources that are significantly better than those of other countries. And we should be using them because they provide us the least cost option, together with backup in the form of gas to power and energy storage. The combination of wind plus solar PV plus flexible power generation, gas, and energy storage provides us the least cost, reliable electricity, dispatchable baseload electricity going forward. This is the least cost for new plant. It's not going to be lower cost than plant that was built 30 years ago. But if you compare it as a technology to the other two options, coal and nuclear, it is the least cost way of delivering reliable quality electricity.
Okay,
and these are
that to
natural
Mr.
resources.
Peake. Do you think that's the way to go? And I also wonder what sort of impact that would have on the economy, the communities living in those areas.
The important thing to understand is, if we're going to talk about a beneficiation economy for South Africa, Groundwork, Centre for Environmental Rights, Earthlife, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, and many other unions have been calling for socially owned renewable energy. So it's not some private entity, it's not privatized electricity, it's not a company, it's not a foreign government that owns our electricity, but it's the people, it's our government, that we can work at having renewable energy owned by us. So not only do we become consumers, but that municipalities with people can become producers. Therein lies an economy that we generate for ourselves, and no money is going to be leaving our shore. So that's really important. And I also just want to briefly reflect on what mining has done for South Africa. What mining has done for South Africa is asbestosis. What mining has done is silicosis. People in coal mines, workers have black lung. There's acid mine drainage in Witbank, in neighborhoods. The land in Mpumalanga is becoming less fertile and has been destroyed because of coal and mining. And we then talk about the constitutional process protecting us, and we have the Center for Applied Legal Studies that very clearly indicates to us that the social labor plans of government and of mining industries is a joke and a farce. And the unions know this. So we cannot depend on the present mining system, and especially coal. It does not provide us what we need for a future and a just transition.
Okay, Mr. Vilakazi, I'm in two very different schools of thought here on this panel. How do you meld the two so that we have a workable plan for the future?
Maybe just to be out of what the latter speaker raised, compliance is an issue. But at the same time, you can't be a player and a referee. The system of our democracy needs a serious engineering. And the definition of beneficiation and the definition of community, including but not limited to issues of what is it that the mining industry before 1994 and post-94, what's the difference? It's a question that we must ask ourselves. And as a trade union, very historic for that matter, we have been demanding that the method that whoever brought the idea to mine in South Africa has never been with the interest of people at heart. It was very slavery. It's now where there is a new dawn, in so to speak, because there are some social coherence, even though the unity of our own people, including ourselves as trade unions, the focus is different today. People depend on what fits them than what will fit the future. In trying to put the ball together, here we need to say, whatever comes as new, we need to see before the sword turning, what is it that is for the people? Because I can tell you now, you have got a mining house which has been given a mining rights, but it operates more than 5 shafts.
Okay, Mr. Vilakazi, I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I'm afraid, is it a parallel universe or a reality? Good to get your thoughts. Mr. Vilakazi, Mr. Peake, and Ms. Yellen, thank you. How do young people choose to act when they want to bring about change in society? Global research has found a new trend. We are live in Washington next.